All right, a little review of solving quadratics in multiple ways. So this one says solve by factoring. You always got to follow the pattern and whatever it is they told you to do. So they said to solve this by factoring. So I know I'm going to set up my parentheses before I go too far. And then I'm looking at this pattern. I'm noticing 9 and 49 are both perfect squares. That tends to tell me that I got to look for the difference of perfect square patterns. And sure enough, that's what this is. In that pattern, it says to take the square root of both of these numbers. So if I take the square root of 9x squared, that gives me a 3x and a 3x. And when I take the square root of 49, that gives me 7 and 7. And I know that one is positive and one is negative because that's what the pattern does. And I don't have to think about it because I just know the pattern. So now in order to solve by factoring, we need to actually set both of these little parentheses sets up equal to 0. So 3x plus 7 equals 0, and 3x minus 7 equals 0. So when I go to solve this, you want to make sure, especially those of us that might have a tendency to flip fractions, that you actually write this out. And then when I divide by 3, that's going to show me x equals negative 7/3. Final answer. And when I go over here, I'm going to add 7. 3x equals 7. And again, if you show the work here, you will not get it wrong and you will not flip your fraction. So always good to just show your work and make sure you get that right answer. So again, solve by factoring. I saw that it was a difference of perfect squares pattern. I took a square root. I factored the problem, and then I set both parentheses equal to 0, solved those for my 2 answers. On this problem, it says solve by square roots. So I need to be able to take a square root. In order to take a square root of this problem, I need to make sure that the part that is being squared is isolated. So the first thing I want to do is add 2 to both sides. That gives me 4 times the parentheses x plus 1 squared equals 36. And then we want to divide by 4, because that's still not part of the thing that's being squared. It's 4 times that whole parenthesis. So I want to divide by 4 on both sides. And now I have the quantity x plus 1 squared equals 9. Now I am finally ready to take my square root because whatever is being squared, whatever's in the parentheses, is isolated. So I can take a square root of both sides. As soon as I take a square root, I want to add in the plus or minus. So plus or minus 3. Square root of 9 is 3. Notice this square root of a squared entity. Those two cancel out, and I'm just left with x plus 1. This isn't quite done yet. I need to subtract this 1 to the other side. So I have x equals negative 1 plus or minus 3. And if that came out differently and they weren't real numbers, I'd be able to leave it there. But this is a lame algebra 2 answer because we can actually do that math. Negative 1 plus 3 equals 2. So that's one answer. And negative 1 minus 3 equals negative 4. That would be my second answer. So we want to take them all the way to this answer if possible, if we can. Awesome. And the last equation says solve by completing the square. So in order to complete the square, I need this to move to the opposite side of the equation, and I need to add my blanks in. So x squared minus 24x plus blank equals, when I move this over, it's going to become a negative 101 plus blank. So now I need to remember my formula is b divided by 2 squared. So my b value is the negative 24 divided by 2 is 12 squared is 144. Now I go to factor. When I go to factor, all I got to do is take the x, and then I'm going to cut this b in half, and I'm going to keep the sign that's with this b term. So the b is negative 24. If I cut that in half, divide by 2 is a negative 12. So that's what goes in as the squared, and negative 101 plus 144 is 43. All right, now I take a square root of both sides because this is isolated here. So the square root knocks out the squared, and I have x minus 12 equals And again, once I take that square root, I got to add the plus or minus the square root of 43. And I add 12 to both sides. And x equals, in this case, I'm not able to do anything else, so 12 plus or minus the square root of 43. Final answer. And in fact, that is 2 answers, just like I got on the other questions. This is the answer 12 plus the square root of 43, one answer, and 12 minus the square root of 43, the second answer.